To Michell Consulting Group's webinar. This is going to be in a series of what we call the Michell University. We're going to be recording this webinar, and it'll be on our website. Today we're going to talk about SAP Business One and the navigation. Some of the topics I'll cover will be covered in detail in other sessions. So what we'll do is at the end, I'll open it up for questions. Right now I have everybody on mute, so I will open it up for questions towards the end. And again, this will be available on our website. Will be downloaded so you can access it anytime. So let's begin. You see here on the screen, I have SAP Business One open. And we're going to talk today about navigation. And I'm using SAP Business One version 8.82, which is the latest release. Some of you may be on the 2007 version or earlier versions of 8.8. So what I'll do is I'll show you some of the functionality that's available in the new software as opposed to 2007. So again, let's start off with the basic navigation and how SAP functions from the standpoint of going through the system. You can see here one of the new features in 8.8 is something called the My Cockpit. Okay, this was a replacement for the My Menu in the old system. You can still use both because, for example, here I have a user. You can see I'm logged in as Sophie, and Sophie does not have the cockpit set up, so she's still using the My Menu. And this is in the 2007 version. In 2007, you had the modules. You have here, you had the drag and relate, and you had the My Menu. The My Menu is a way of customizing. So, for example, here under Forms, you can have your sales orders and sales quotes. It allows you to open them this way. And again, you can have under Reports your various reports. This was replaced with what's known as the Cockpit. I'm going to go back to my other session here so you can have the Cockpit. We still have the modules. We still have the drag and relate. And now we have the My Cockpit. The My Cockpit allows me basically to put information on this screen. You can put things like common functions, which we have here, like the My Menu. So now I can just click here, and I can open up a sales quotation. I can open up a sales order if I wish. Okay. You have the open documents. So you have here, if you open up here, you can see that we have the open system here. So we have right now currently 35 open quotations. Once we click, it'll update and so on. So the advantage of the cockpit really is replacing the My Menu, but again, it allows you to see everything in a snapshot on the screen. So you have all the information here, as well as your common functions, as well as your alerts. You can also open up a browser for internet access. I just don't have it open because I don't have internet on this virtual machine I'm using for the demo, but you can do it here. There's also other things that you can add, what they call widgets in the widget gallery. So you can further have stuff in here on the screen. You can see here, again, we have the alerts, we have the common functions, and the open documents. Another nice feature in the 8.8 is they create a message log. One of the problems in the 2007 and earlier versions, when you used to get an error at the bottom of the screen, it would just flash real quick. You really couldn't see what it was. It would just kind of flash and go away. Now it's stored here. So in this case, I'm displaying the last 50 messages. So you can see here, this one here, and so on, information on the screen. So again, let's go back to the modules and let's talk a little bit about the actual setup of SAP. Here along the top, we have, again, our file edit view. SAP works in the Windows environment, so basically everything you have in Windows that you would normally see in Excel and Word, you have here. You have File, and again, you can look on File, you can do print previews, prints, so on. You can send emails, Outlook emails, you can export data, lock the screen, and so on. Obviously, the things you see in gray are just not active right now because we're on a menu. You have all the functionality of edit, cut, paste, copy. You can view the user-defined fields. We'll see that in a marketing document. You can view system information. This gives you the file names and field names for queries and so on. You have the picker display, so you can see when we open up forms, you can set to see the list selection, the little date the calculator, and so on, which you can actually open those up. You have your modules. Again, you can go here. So we could actually, instead of going to sales and AR, sales order this way, we can go to our modules. So we can go to sales and AR, sales order this way. You have some tools. Again, the tools are set up for the layout designers, and depending what you have open, you can see different tools. You have an access log. And by the way, all the stuff I'm showing you is set up with authorization. So if a user is not authorized to do something, they won't be able to see it. You have your queries and your query generators. That's why the system information is valuable when you actually want to write a query, because you can see the field names. You still have the My Menu, okay, which is available here. You still have the My Shortcuts, which you can program. For example, here you can program a function key. So if I was to press F5, I would take me right to sales orders. We have our user-defined windows, all set up. And this is our Cockpit. We talked about the Cockpit, and there is a webinar on our website that gives you detail about the Cockpit. But basically, once you enable the Cockpit, you would then turn it on for each individual user. So you can see here that I'm logged in as Jason Butler, and I have my Cockpit enabled, right? As opposed to Sophie, does not have her Cockpit enabled. If I was to turn it on, they would both have access. Again, we also have the same thing we see on top in the menu. We have our icons. Again, we have our preview, our print. You can email through the SAP system. You can fax. You can export to Excel, to Word. You have PDF capability built in the 8.8 version, and so on. Here's some applications. We have our find and our add. Now, these are important. We'll discuss these because in SAP, when windows are open, they're open in one of two ways. You either opened in a find mode or an add mode. Typically, the master records open up in find mode, which we'll view those in a few minutes. Master records, I'm talking about the business partner master, the item master, the general ledger, and so on. Those will open up basically in find mode, so then you can search all the marketing documents. SAP considers marketing documents, sales orders, purchase orders, AR invoices, AP invoices. They always open up in an add mode. You can switch back and forth between the two. Here we have our basically what's known as our VCR buttons. This indicates the first data record in whatever I have open up. And we can scroll previous, next, and back. We have filtering capabilities. So when we open up a window, we can filter. We have how we want to sort when we're looking up a view. We can sort ascending, descending. We still have our base and target documents. And again, there is on our website, there is a detailed webinar about the relationship of all the documents. I'll touch briefly on this as we go through the navigation. We have our gross profit, again, our payment means, and so on. So you can see along here, we have our query manager, our alerts, our form settings, our calendars, and so on, built into the system. All right. So let's open up the documents and see some common functionalities. I'm going to go into, first of all, business partners. I'm going to go to the business partner master data. Okay, and let's open this up a little bit bigger. And you can see by default, since this is a master record, I'm opening up in find mode. You can see here. I can search on any of these fields that are in yellow, and I can do a series of searches. By default, it's going right to the business partner code. So if I was to hit, say, asterisk, and I was to click find, I'm now looking at all my business partners. And for purpose of the demo, my customers begin with a C, my vendors begin with a V. I can also do more than one search. I can say, give me all the customers. So I'm using two search criteria here. I'm going to click find, and I'm just getting all the customers. I can also do the same thing with vendors, and so on. So I can add a series of these. I can also say, let me look at the code here. So we have a Canadian vendor and a Euro vendor, so I can even go one step further. And I can say, give me all the vendors that are defaulted to the Euro currency, and I'll get an exact match. When I do get an exact match, you'll see it comes up automatically. As I hit as opposed to giving you just one in a search. So that's the find and add. Okay, so again, if we want to go back to find, now we're in find. We can also click here, and we can go into add mode. We have the ability of going through both. Here you see now that the VCR buttons are turned on because we're in a document. So if we go here, we're in the first record. This will take us record to record. This will be the last record. This is useful sometimes when you're entering orders because you may enter a sales order and you want to call it back up right away. It's sometimes easy just to click the last. Typically, that would be the last sales order unless there's a lot of people entering orders at one time. You can see here are user-defined fields. In SAP, user-defined fields are things that are outside the standard SAP that are added for clients. You can see here that they're sitting on this side. If I was to turn them off, I don't have my user-defined fields. So I can go to View, User-defined fields, and now they're back on. I can have them on either side. I can have them here on the right. I can put them on the left. I can put them on the bottom down here. I just typically put them here. And again, you can see that type of information. Right. So now let's look at the documents for a moment. That was a master record, and again, just to show you some other master records, if I go to the inventory, the item master, you see again it's opening up in find mode because it's a master record. So as we go to financials, chart of accounts, again by default, I'm in find mode, and I would have to go to add if I want to add a new GL account or add a new item and so on. So let's go and look at an order. So we're going to go here. We're going to create a, let's look at a sales quotation. Okay, and we're going to talk about here navigation, the relationship between the documents briefly. And again, there's a detail on here. So again, you can see by default we're in add mode because we're adding a document. So it would be 264. Again, if we click on the last record, we're seeing the document here. The document structure in SAP, and SAP refers to marketing documents as any of the sales and AR documents are considered marketing documents, as well as the purchase and AP documents. You'll see that all the documents share a commonality. So let's open up this one here. Put them both on the screen. Turn off the user-defined fields. So you can see here, basically, we have the header information up top. So the header information for the quote. You see the header information for an AP invoice. It all works the same. We have the footer information down here, okay, which we're seeing totals and employees. You see that's in all the systems. And then in the middle, we have our tabs. We have our Contents tab. In this case, the Contents is what are we doing. We do have two options in the Contents tab. If we're talking about items, we're dealing with inventory items here. If we talk about service, okay, we're dealing with GL account information. This is useful sometimes because you may have to give a customer a credit for sales tax, and you don't want to actually delete the invoice and re-enter all the line items since you didn't return anything. You can open up and actually put the GL account for sales tax and give him his corresponding credit. Same with an AP invoice. Typically, we get AP invoices from our expense vendors like the rent, utilities, and so on. These don't relate to items. We're going to go then directly to the GL. So we have the option of both of them. We have our Logistics tab. Logistics deals with the shipping information. We can have multiple bill tos and ship tos in the system. One of the new functions in 882 is they kind of cleaned up the way the fields are. You can see on the address components, they put a separate city, state, block, and so on. In the version 2007, this was just kind of an open field, like a notepad. So sometimes you would have blanks and things didn't line up. So what they did is they separated so you have actually a field for the city, the state, the zip, and so on. You have your Accounting tab. It is going to relate to accounting information on the document. And you can see here. So we're going to see things like the journal remarks when we post, the effect on journal entry, payment terms, the payment methods, and so on. One of the new features that's in the 882 version is the attachments. This is available on all the marketing documents. The attachments allow you to attach things to a specific document outside of SAP. So So for example, if I was doing a sales quote and I was dealing with, say, hazardous materials and I had some hazmat paperwork or something I need to attach, I can browse, and I can browse within my system. So I can go to whatever I want, and I can grab, and we'll say here, and it'll show the path. This will stay with the document, so then I can view it at any given time. That's our relationship with the document. We do have some remarks down here. And again, the documents are all linked to each other. That's what we call the relationship map, which again, there is a detailed demo on that, but for now I'm just going to cancel this. I'm going to go to sales order. And let's call it the last record. Let's find one that has a link to it. Don't have any links. Let's go to the delivery. You can see here that you have a delivery that's actually closed. Let me find one that has a link. Here we go. So you can see that we have a delivery ticket, which is still open, okay? And you can see a remark. It's based on sales order 292. One of the things in navigation is we talk about the base and target document. Basically, the base document is where you're coming from, and the target document is where you're going. So this delivery started off as a sales order. So if I click here on the base document, I see my sales order here, okay? And the sales order has no remarks, so therefore it has no base. So it did not come from a quote. It started as a sales order. And again, you can see the sales order has a target document, which is the delivery. Now, one of the things that this is available in all the versions still. One of the things that when you did this, it kind of like opened up a lot of windows on the screen, and you would lose some of the links along the way. Because, for example, if you had a sales order that we created a purchase order against, you wouldn't see it on the links. So one of the things that is new in the SAP 8.8 is what's known as the relationship map. So what I can do is I can right-click in the document, I can open up the relationship map, and now I get a snapshot of what's involved. See? So you don't lose that link. Here what we're saying is that this is the business partner involved. We started as a sales order. The sales order was done in 3 deliveries. We have a delivery here, a delivery, and a delivery. Okay, this delivery was turned into an AR invoice along with this delivery. So these 2 deliveries were consolidated to an AR invoice, and then we had a return. The relationship map is a very nice feature that's in the 8.8 version because you can see this could be a complicated order. So we can have things related to purchase orders and so on, so it gives you a nice snapshot. You can also look at the posting details. Again, if there's any postings on this, so you can see the journal entry that's affecting this delivery, as well as any related items that are involved in the system. Okay. So let's talk now. Let's go back into a couple things on the sales, and let's talk about how we can customize our windows for our users. So we're going to open up a sales order. Okay. And you can see here we have our customer. Again, if we go View, and we click on this little button, you can see now we have the little ticker here, so we can actually do it this way. Let me show you that again. Turn that off. You can see you don't really have, if you look at the dates here, you don't really have the little calendars or anything. But what I can do is I can go into View, and the ticker display, I can say, I want to turn that on. I want to go View, ticker display, and I want to turn on the date. Now what happens is you have a little date. If you want to use it this way, now you have a little calendar. You can choose from the calendar. And you do have the little tab here, as opposed to doing it from the tab key itself. Now, some things about we can set up, there's some things that are global that are related to all of SAP lookups, and there's some things that are user-specific. So, for example, when we open up our business partner list, you can see by default we have the BP code. When we're searching by BP code, we have the business partner name, we have the address, we have a currency type, and we have terms. If I want to modify this, and this modification would be for anywhere I look up a business partner. So if I look up a business partner in a sales order or an AR invoice or the business partners themselves, I would get that. And again, everything I'm showing you is controlled by authorizations. So if you're not authorized to make these changes to the form settings, you wouldn't be able to. But let me go here to form settings. Okay. And again, we want to add something. So if we click here, this is everything that's available in the business partner itself. So let's say contact person, and this is the screen name. Like that. We click update. Okay. We're going to cancel. Go back in, and now you can see the contact. And you can see by default we're going by business partner code, and you can see the arrow. We talked about the ascending and descending. We can click on here. We can change it this way. So we can say we want our business partners to be descending. And every time we open up the screen, they will be in a descending mode. Or we can just double click here. So if we double click, we're descending, ascending, so we can do it in any field. So if we want to go to the BP codes, we can do it that way. We want to search on contacts, we can double click, and so on. So then we can just grab our customer, and then you can see here we're in the customer. Same holds true with the form settings down what you see here. You basically have in this box, so we have item number, in this case, catalog number, item description, back order quantity, and so on. You can see that these are kind of grayed out. I don't know if you can see on the screen, but these are grayed out a little bit. That means that the item description is set to be visible but not active, which means I can see it and I can't edit it. So if I go here and I select an item, as I go through, you can see I stop at the BP code, but then I skip all the way to the quantity. That's because these are not. These are visible but not active. And how we do that is in the form settings again. So once we have the document open, we go to the form settings. Now this form setting in the document is user specific. So since I'm logged in as the manager, close this for a minute. Here I'm logged in as the manager, which is Jason. This is going to follow him. So the nice thing about this, I can customize the way I like to have the screen. Maybe I want to have the item first, then the description, or I want the description first, then the item. Once I set it up and I go to any other computer and I log in as me, as the manager per se, I will get my screen. So here we go to form settings. And again, we have two things here. We have the table and the row. The fields are the same in both. Okay. The table, however, is what you see in the screen, and the row will be the row detail. So for example, here is what I'm seeing here. So you can see I have visible, I have the item number, which is visible and active. I have the business partner catalog number, which is visible and active. I have the item description, which is visible but not active. Okay. So again, by definition, if something is not visible, you can't have something that's active and not visible. It has to be visible, but you can do the choices between the two. So here, for example, if I want to say, I want to show the serial number, I can go here and so on, and I can make it visible and not active. I click OK, you'll see they're here. If I want to move things around, like maybe I want to have the back order quantity after the item, I can go here to the table. So I can say, I can grab it and drop it. Now it's after the item, and I click OK. You can see the change right here. The row detail, if I double click on the number 1, you can see I'm opening up the row detail. So the nice thing about the two is that if there are things that you don't use every day when entering orders, like in this case there's a tax code, maybe there's a tax liable, and you normally don't access this every day, so you don't want to fill up the screen with stuff you don't need. But the same thing, you can go to the row detail, and the tax code is now visible and active, so you can change it. The GL account is visible but not active. Again, it's grayed out, but you can see information here. and that's coming from the rows. So if you go here, you can see the row format. We have a lot more things turned on. Okay. And then the table format had all the fields are the same. You have the same choices in either one. It's just the row is the detail. And then, of course, you can preset the document. This document is preset to be the sales employee Sophie, okay, and a commission, and so on. In my default warehouse. There's a new feature in 8.8, which I'll show you, that you can actually set this stuff up for user defaults, which we'll see that in right after this. So again, there we are. We can see that. We can double click, and then we can make changes to our row details. Okay. One of the other things that you notice that we have a lot is what we call the drill down, or the links to. Again, when I open up this sales order, you can see I have a link to the business partner. So if I want to see what's going on, I can click here, and I can open up my business partner. All right? And the same thing. I'm looking at a business partner. He has an account balance. He owes us $4,237. I can click, and I can drill down into what I see. Okay, and I can drill even deeper to the actual invoice. And again, I can drill into here. And again, I'm opening up a lot of windows. If you have a lot of windows open, you can always go to Windows. You can set them to Cascade. Okay. Or you can go to Windows and close, or just jump from whatever to whatever. So if I want to go right back to the main menu, I can go here. Let's just close some of these. And let's just stay with the business partner for right now. Okay. One of the things we talk about is the currency types, and I'm going to talk about this briefly. And again, there is a detailed webinar on how to work with currencies and foreign exchange. So let's go to Find. Let's do asterisk. And let's find our euro. Okay. In SAP, we're dealing with basically three things in the currencies. We can define any currency we want in the currency setup, but we actually deal with three. And you'll see this throughout the system. We deal with what's known as the system currency, which is denoted by SC on a lot of the documents. We have the local currency, which is LC, and the business partner currency. Basically, what happens is the system currency is the currency of the general ledger. It is the currency of the corporation. So for you, a U.S. corporation, your system currency is going to be U.S. dollars, no matter where you operate in the world. The local currency is the currency of the country you're doing business. So in this case, we're a U.S. corporation, but we have an office in Canada. Our local currency would be Canadian dollars. The BP currency is the currency that the business partner wants to have his documents in. So in this case, the business partner, let's say, is in Germany, so his currency is going to be euros. We have that functionality. So here I'm looking at the business partner currency. So he owes me 40,000 euros. If I go to the system currency, he owes me 56,000 US dollars. In this case, local currency is the same because we're operating in the United States. Okay? I just want to review that. There's more detail, but some people get confused because when they go into orders and stuff, you'll see things like, let's see if we have it on here. I don't have my extended cards, but sometimes you'll see the LC next to stuff like that. Okay. Another common thing what SAP does, which is really nice in navigation, is data is never really erased or deleted in SAP. Things are what they call internally reconciled. So one of the advantages you have, if I go to the account balance here, okay, and I look here, I can see which says display unreconciled transactions only. So what I'm seeing is, in this case, the open invoices. If I click on this, you'll notice I see a lot more data. Let me make this a little bit bigger so we can see. But notice here the balance dues are 0. So see here, like for example, we have invoice number 10 and incoming payment number 11. If I turn this off, I don't see that. So the advantage of SAP is that I can run an aging for both customers and vendors at any given time. So in the middle of an audit and I need to run the aging for February, I can do that because data is never erased. That's a nice feature. Some softwares don't allow that. You have to, you don't have a hard copy. You got to, get it off a backup tape and so on. So again, you can see that display. Another feature that's available is that what you can do is if you want to right-click on a transactional line, you can look at the applied transaction. You can see that this invoice here, number 10, we have an incoming payment that was applied. So it was paid with an incoming payment. Another feature that they added in the in the 8.8 version from 2007, in 2007 you only had one date. Now you have a from and to date. So you can, if you're looking up, you have a lot of data, you can say, if you click on the posting date, okay, you're only looking in the specific range that you have here. If you turn it off, it's not active. If you display the last 5 transactions, you're just going to get it this way, again with an opening balance line, and so on. Another new thing that they did in the 8.8 is they allow you to run the agings directly from the windows here. Okay, and they've done some modifications on the agings. They allowed you to pick your dates. In the 2007, you had intervals of days, and you would say, like, I want 30 days. It would put 30, 60, 90. If I said 7 days, it would do 7, 14, 21. Now I can put whatever I want here, and so on. We've also modified the aging. What we did is we gave you the ability of doing what they call expand and collapse. So you can look at a summary in a detail. Okay, let's just close that. Look at some other features. Another feature you can do is you can customize the names of the menus. So for example, let's go into a AP invoice. Okay, you can see how this invoice number here, I changed this. Originally it was the reference number. If I hold my control key and I double click, you can see the original description was vendor reference number. Let's just set that back. Okay, so you see here. But again, most people refer to this as the invoice number. It confuses people saying the reference number, so I can hold my control key. I can double click. We can make this the number. I can do it like that. Again, hold the control key and double click. I want to make it bold and or I can do that. I have the ability of seeing that way. Okay. Let's save that. So again, we saw our menu structure. Again, we can also customize the menus if you want. Again, if we go from the menu here, let's say we don't use service and repair and we don't use the human resource side of this. We can go to our form settings and we can go down to service and human resource. And I don't see them on the screen. I can still go into the modules and access them this way. I can also do the same thing within here. So for example, in sales order, let's say that we don't want to see the document generation wizard and we don't do reserve invoices. So we can do the same thing. We can go open up sales and AR. We can take off the reserve invoice and the document generation. And again, you don't see them on the screen. They are still available. We go to modules, sales and AR, they're still available here. Okay. So let's talk about now the drag and relate. This option is kind of an on-the-fly way of doing some queries. So you want to look at information. So for example, I may go up here and let's open up an inventory item. Go to my first data record. we have this item here, and under the Inventory tab, we can see that we have 206 committed. That means we have open sales orders for this item, and we have 398 on order. So now we're curious to see why we have so much committed. We don't know what open orders we are. What we can do is we can open up the drag and relate, and we have the ability of going into orders and order details. So what I can do is I can grab any field on here, so I'm going to hold down the description. I'm going to drag and drop it or relate it to sales orders. Okay. And again, we're looking at our statuses, so we want to double click on the statuses. These are all closed. These are open. We can go right to the sales order detail, and again, we can grab the item number and go to the sales order details. And again, you're looking at all the quantities here. The drag and relate's kind of a little on-the-fly way of going. Let's do the same thing with the purchasing side of it. So we're going to grab the item. We're going to drop it on purchase order details. And again, we're looking at the purchase order details for this specific item. We're looking at both open and closed on here. And again, that's available in a lot of stuff. You can look at business partners. You may want to look at that. It's probably not going to give me anything. Okay, again, it's just going to open up the DP. There's really no sense in dragging that to that. But again, you can look at financial information. You can look at some journal entries. You grab the item. You can drop it on the journal entry here. We don't have any records found, and so on. But that's what the drag and relate allows you to do. The drag and relate allows you to kind of do little on-the-fly stuff. So again, if you're looking at something like this, and you want to find out what makes these up, you can open this. You can click on the drag and relate. Again, by going into here, I can see all the information. Again, I'm just grabbing one thing here. Just drop the general warehouse onto sales order details. And again, you're looking at it that way. Okay, so we see that. We also have some help information. Let's just go back to my Cockpit here. Here's something new that's in the version. You can actually do a quick lookup of an item or a document. You can, for example, if I put in and I do a search, I found the business partner called Earthshakers. That's a global search that's added. This is available even without the Cockpit being turned on. You can see it here. We also have various ways of doing the help in this system. For example, we can go to help, we go to documentation, and we can go to online help. Okay, so we have our content, and what this does, this follows the menu. Let me just open up the modules. So you can see here we're kind of following. So if we look at inventory, we have the inventory master, inventory management. We can see we're kind of following. So we can go into the inventory and, again, open up something specific to that. We can also do a search. So we're going to come here and we're going to say type in the word exchange rate, list topics. And, again, it tells you, we double-click on this one, the exchange rate difference information. You can also store favorites if you want to look things up and store it as a favorite. You can also do it when you're in something. So, for example, if I go to sales in AR and I go to sales order and I open up my sales order, I can actually just click here, which is the context, and what it'll do, it will actually take me right to this section of sales orders. Just update that. So again, we're just right here in sales orders. You can also, on various fields, so let's call up an order. If you want to do a right click, you have the ability of doing what's this. You can say that specific field, what the customer reference number is in the system. So you have that ability of doing it within the system. Now that you notice I've been doing the right clicks, you have a lot of the functionality that's up here. It's also in, if we right-click, so for example, if we go to the payment means, we can open up for a deposit on an order, the same as going here, and doing it that way. We right-click and we go to gross profit. We're looking here, same as the gross profit up here. So you have that functionality in here. There's some more things in here. For example, you can look at weight and volume calculations, again, by right-clicking. This item doesn't have it, but if we had items with weights and volumes, you can calculate the total weight and volume of the order. You can change it, cubic ounces, again, and so on. Whatever we'd like to do, we can change here. You can also look at what's known as opening and closing remarks. We can add basically header and footer remarks for a specific sales order that can print on the actual orders. Okay, and you see that in the system. Again, to recap, we're looking at the SAP with the Cockpit open. We have our modules menu. And SAP has some things set up in the menus. Administration, basically, has to do with the initial setup or things you may want to add. So, for example, we have the system initialization. For example, the company details. Okay, in this case, we're setting up our currencies. Okay, we're setting up our default banks, how we want to handle our inventory valuation methods, and so on. We also have the general settings. And here's where you would open up things like the Cockpit. Again, but these are the default settings for the system. Okay, how we see what we see on the screen and so on. Okay. Then we have financials. And SAP considers financials basically general ledger, and we'll be having a detailed webinar on each one of these modules. So we'll have a class on financials. We have sales opportunities. Again, this is not sales order, but it allows you to create an opportunity with a lead, as we saw from our business partners. Actually set up leads. The lead is somebody who's not a customer yet, but you're trying to get his business, so you can define all his information. It'll stay as a lead. You can actually do sales orders and quotations to leads, but you can't actually invoice a lead. And you can look here at the sales opportunities. Again, if you want to track, you can see what this sales opportunity is a 20% close. Here's the potential of what we can make on the deal. We have some general information. We have our stages we can define, and so on. And again, we'll get into this in detail on when we have those types of classes. And again, sales and AR is related to sales and receivables. We have the purchases in AP. Actually, something new in the 8.8 version, there's the purchase quotations. Acts like a sales quotation, but allows you to actually do a purchase quote. We have our business partners. SAP considers customers and vendors and leads business partners, so they're all put together. We also have some new features in 8.8, which we'll be going through in other webinars. We actually have the blanket agreements, which allows you to basically create it and pull off it. So if you have a customer that's going to order 100 units a month for the next year, you can create the blanket agreement. And what you can do is, as you invoice every month, you can pull those 100 off. You also have campaigns in the campaign generation. You can do campaigns for marketing. Those are new features in the 8.8 version. Banking basically relates to anything with money. We have incoming payments, which we typically refer to as cash receipts. That's money coming in. It can come in from the customers or even a vendor, or maybe a vendor refund. We talk about outgoing payments. We typically talk about AP checks. That's money going out. So you can do outgoing checks and wire transfers. Then we have our inventory, dealing with the items and the transactions of inventory. We have our production. If we want to run production, bill of materials, manufacturing, we can actually do it that way. And actually something new in the 8.8 is the Procurement Confirmation Wizard. This allows us to create purchase orders for batches of sales. In this 7.7, you can create a purchase order from the individual sales orders, but it was the one-to-one relationship. Now what you can do is you can create sales orders. A lot of people are going to create sales orders all day. At the end of the day, we're going to create purchase orders for all those sales orders consolidated. We have our materials requirement. Okay, materials requirement planning. This is for forecasting. So if we basically have, say, orders for 100 over the next 3 weeks, we want to see what we have. The system will say, we have order for 100. You have 50 in stock, which you can use. You have enough raw materials to build another 30. Okay, so now, and then the remaining 20, and I'll actually recommend purchase orders for you to create the materials to actually buy those. And then we have reports. We can do the reports here. So we can go into the purchase reports this way, or in every module, we have our reports. And we have that here. It's kind of, again, the setup and some of the new features. So that's the navigation of SAP. You can see, again, how we move around the screen, how we can customize information. So, for example, you can go to Business Partners, and we can open up our Business Partners. We have our drill down capabilities and our navigational records here. And again, we can see, for example, this customer has 3 opportunities. You can look at it this way. You can also do it in a graph form. So we have some people on. I'm going to actually open up for questions. I believe I have everybody open that's on the panel. Do we have any questions?
Hello?
We're good?
Can you hear us?
Okay. Turn off the volumes here for everybody. Okay. So once again, just to recap, that is the navigational portion of SAP Business One, including the new version 8.82, which has some of these features. So once again, with this, we're recording this webinar. This is going to be on our website. You can visit us at www.michellgroup.com to view this. Once again, there's no more questions, so this concludes the broadcast, and I thank you very much for your time.